Welcome to the Culture, Faith, and Politics podcast. I'm Pat Kahnke, and I'm joined today by the Reverend Tihomir Kukolja. Welcome.
I'm glad to be with you. I've been listening to you for quite a long time and have been enjoying your approach and how you bring your message to the people.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate that. And I'm looking forward to this conversation. We're going to be going deep today into a Christian approach to some of the most troubling issues that we're dealing with, not only as a nation, but globally. Reverend Kukolja lived through the breakup of the former Yugoslavia in the early 90s, and he worked in Sarajevo during part of the siege of Sarajevo. And so he has firsthand experience in what can happen when nationalism, divisions, demonization of the other, when those sorts of things can come to a boil until a nation reaches a point of no return. And because of his decades of experience working to bring reconciliation in some very troubled international settings, he's felt it necessary in recent years to tell the truth about, for instance, Donald Trump, some of his tactics that he uses. And because he sees a lot of the same concerning patterns in the U.S. as he's seen in other parts of the world. So I want to talk about that today. Some of the lessons that he's learned and some ways to think about these things as a Christian. And I also want to hear Reverend Kukolja's thoughts on Gaza. I've been hesitant, I'll just say at the start here, I've been hesitant to speak about Gaza because I felt inadequate to the task. And we're going to get into that a little bit later about why, because I've heard him say some things that are really helpful about how to think of that as a Christian, think about it. So I think I've got to become adequate to the task. I have to talk about this. And so I want to hear his insights because, based on his experience. So that's going to be a little bit later in the program. So just professionally, Reverend Kukolja was the director of Renewing Our Minds from 2001 to 2019. He was the executive director of the Forum for Leadership and Reconciliation, 2011 to 2020. And over the past 35 years, he's worked as a pastor, radio producer and journalist, religious liberty leader, a blogger. He's lived and worked in the former Yugoslavia, Croatia, England, Australia, and the U.S., and he's been living in the U.S. since 2008. And he says he's still on a honeymoon with his Texas wife, Christine, who'll be married in 2003. They have a son, Matthew, who's now 17, and they live in Houston, Texas. So again, Tihomir, welcome. I'm just honored to have you here today.
And I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. And, we have so much we can talk about, like I said, but first, I'd just like you to just tell us a bit about where you were born and some detail about that and kind of narrate the story for us about, kind of leading into the breakup of Yugoslavia, because I think it's foundational to the work that you do. And I think I might be a typical American guy where I watched it play out on TV all those years ago, but I never really understood the conflict. And I think since it's kind of central to your formation and the work that you do, why don't you just talk to us about where you were born and then take us through some of that history.
Yes, I was born in what used to be former Yugoslavia, now specifically in Croatia.
Okay.
And I come from a mixed family marriage. My late parents, my father was a Croat, my mother was a Serb, which gives immediately, for those who understand the circumstances there, an additional flavor. We lived in Croatia for the most of the part of my life, my young life. And I was just coming from England, finishing my studies there, back to what used to be still Yugoslavia, when the things were rapidly changing. And we are talking about the years 1989, 1990, and then 1991, when actually everything exploded. And then basically we had a war that lasted for practically 4 or 5 years, involving Serbs, Croats, and Bosniaks. But then in the background, you have a situation with Kosovo that expanded into new conflicts, and even in Macedonia for a while. So we can talk about conflicts in the Balkan region and we are talking, when I talk about Balkan at this moment, I'm specifically thinking territory of the former Yugoslavia. We are talking about wars and conflicts that lasted altogether for about 10 years. But specifically when we talk about Croats, Serbs, and Bosniaks, it lasted for four years.
Okay.
I just came from England. I was there, and I was actively involved in humanitarian work, and also as a journalist and a producer, radio producer. So this brought me in all kinds of situations, even that you mentioned that I was in Sarajevo. I did not spend a long time in Sarajevo, but I spent in 93 1 full month in besieged Sarajevo. That was long enough for me to experience the full expansion of war, because comparing Bosnia and Croatia, still there was a difference. Our war in Croatia, however bitter and hard it was gentle in comparison with what was happening in Bosnia.
Okay.
So those 4 years, I learned about the history from the first-hand experience. I learned how wars are never what they appear to be. I learned about how young people with enthusiasm are going into war as if it's a football match or a soccer match, only to soon realize that they are not going to get out soon, if ever they get out of this. I also realized, and I will be very frank about this, that when it comes to war, everyone plays dirty. Everyone plays dirty. And I could talk for a long time about this, but I want to specifically take a minute to talk about preceding time, say 1 year or 2 years leading to this conflict.
Okay. Yeah, this is what I'm kind of fascinated about this.
And, I lived in the climate, and I was among those who believed we would never end up in war. We have been living as brother in the brotherhood for the last 45 years. We will know how to resolve this. We will not our tension resolve through war. We will never. We are better than that. Only to realize that when came to the point of no return, things escalated so quick that, believe me, if the war starts now, within a week, you think you have always been in that war and you have not seen anything else. And then what precedes is a language of hatred, demonizing the other one, calling the other one with all kinds of names that would strip that nation or people from anything that is human. That's one thing that has very much been present. Lying, creating mythologies or resurrecting mythologies to bring your nation to the top, victimizing your nation, historically victimizing your nation. Whatever happened in the past, it's not us. We never contributed anything. It's always them. And when you have those few things coming together, you get to the point when you just need a few sparks. And then those sparks move into total explosion. And from that point onward, what you are witnessing is just the mass trail of lives being lost. That's a kind of in a nutshell. But as I said, I could say much more. And where is the parallel? Where is the parallel? A few years ago, I'm trying to calculate, was this 4 years ago, whatever, one of the American bestseller author interviewed me for her book. She wanted to know at that time, in the context of Trump, she wanted to know the same thing, who asked me a question about the parallels between former Yugoslavia and America. And I said this: America is only lucky that it is so big in size that it is hard for anyone who knows who is going to start a civil war. But if it was smaller, all elements exist to have the very same situation and conclusion of those tensions as we had in the former Yugoslavia. Here, maybe it's not between, I don't know, it is now in some sense, but we had a tension which was very much ethnic: Croats, Serbs, Bosniaks. Clear division of wall being built in between. We could live in the same village, we do not communicate. We are enemies to each other. Here we have the same situation at the political level.
Okay.
There is a war. There is a war. I'm not going to go deep because I love my family here. But believe me, this war exists even in the extended family on my wife's side.
Right. Oh, yes. I've
Extended,
experienced it too. I think
there is a wall still where everyone is polite, but there is a clear wall, which we don't know. We know which we are not going to cross.
right.
So I don't know whether this is enough for introduction.
That's excellent, and you're laying out the parallels. There's so many pieces there already that resonate with me. You know, the thing that you said about America being too large. You know, we're lucky that we're large enough that somebody can't just light spark the flame and it just burns. I've heard people talk about this that and this is one of my biggest concerns, is not so much like an all-out civil war the way that it used to look, back in the day where it was North versus South the first time we went through it. But it could a civil war, if it comes here, could look a lot more like just terrorism, acts of terrorism that happen kind of throughout the country. And I just think the more that we can do to help people understand each other and to bring down the tensions is better. But I think a mistake that people make, and you can speak to this, if what you think about what I'm about to say. I think a mistake that people make is to think that if we just talk more gently or more nice about this, that it'll just kind of go away. And to me, like, de-radicalization isn't about just saying nice words. It's about telling the truth. And so there's an aspect, I think, that, and you can speak to this and tell me what you think, but my theory is that we've got to tell the truth. Even, I make a lot of videos that I kind of refer to them as polemical, where it's like I'm trying to make a strong case. I'm trying to wake people up, but I'm not trying to add division. I'm trying to heal divisions by bringing truth about some difficult things. But I don't know, just talk about that a bit, like how you've seen that play out in the world, if you think I'm onto something, or what can you add to that?
You are
Okay.
very much, and although you have much bigger platform with your programs, I also have my circle, and it's pretty much international, and it's very much related to what I used to do. So I do have a kind of constituency which is international, within which I'm communicating in a number of ways. And exactly, you are very much right. And maybe we are escaping or not, we'll come back if necessary. That's the reason why 10 years ago, the moment when I saw Donald Trump coming down this golden escalator, to me, this was a sound, alarming sound. To me, this was immediately a statement that telling me, no, that's not what we want, and we need to speak about this. We need to speak, I dare say, against it, but not in a sense of creating conflicts. But we need to help people realize what is going on. But the problem is that when you do this, then those people who do not want to listen to you will accuse you that actually you are doing the very thing you are not doing. This is that you are spreading hate just because you dare talk about this. That is my experience. And on my Facebook page, for example, it comes in waves, comes and goes. For a period of time it's quiet, then there is a war there. And it's on the basis of this, how dare I actually speak the way I speak? And it's exactly related to this. And I'm very careful that whatever I'm putting or sharing, that it's not inflammatory, but that actually, as far as I know, objectively represents the situation, the circumstances here, as a kind of sign of warning and encouragement also to those who see the same to know that they're not insane.
Right. Exactly. I feel like that's a huge part of what I do. Is one of the best comments that I hear repeatedly on my work is, "You're helping me to know that I'm not crazy." Because I think people get surrounded by. I mean, I live in St. Paul, Minnesota, which is, Minnesota is very, I'd say it's a purple state leaning towards blue, but in the city where I live, I'm not surrounded by people who disagree with me. If you go out, 10 miles out into the country, then I'm surrounded by people who disagree with me. But there are people in families who they feel like they're seeing things and it doesn't make sense, but no one in their family, no one in their church agrees with them or sees it the same way, and they start to feel crazy. And so I think you and I both are trying to help people feel a little bit more sane when they see these things. Um, I want to get back to some things that you talked about that you saw in, in the breakup of former Yugoslavia. You said you listed several things. You listed the language of hate, of demonizing, dehumanization, lying, just like systemic lying, creating a mythology about this group of people, and then victimization of a certain group of people. And the things that you talked about, I'm just at the beginning of a series that I'm doing on fascist tactics. You just listed a bunch of fascist tactics there. Did people call it that there? How did people talk about what they were seeing? Was this a fascist movement that was trying to take over, or are these just tactics that we see throughout this sort of stuff?
I wouldn't say so much that at that time there was this kind of calling each other fascists. Although I would say that they did like Serbs calling Croats and Croat Serbs nicknamed each other
Yeah.
as fascists, but I don't think that they really meant that,
Mhm.
because we were in a real situation. We were in a situation where the country was splitting, and some in the former country didn't want that split happening.
Mhm.
They wanted to have a more control over what used to be former Yugoslavia. The others felt oppressed, and they used all the means constitution provided to referendum and so on, and to separate. And this was what caused our problem. And this resurrected mythology, unfinished businesses from the Second World War, to put it like this,
Okay.
we brought forward so that we are afraid of each other, that Serbs are now going to do the Croats the very thing that we are doing 40, not 40 anymore, but in 40s,
Right.
during the Second World War, that especially Croats would do the same to the Serbs. And when you have people overlapping, living in a small area where you actually in a few hours cross I don't know how many countries, and you are in a different cultural ethnic environment within 1 hour of driving, when everything is so close or even overlapping, this works. It creates tension. So I realize I'm kind of slipping away from the question, but
No, that's
but I think this was a pattern of behavior without maybe so much in those times calling each other overly fascist, although I wouldn't exclude that this was also present now when I'm thinking that everyone wanted to go back to the 40s,
Mhm.
to the time of fascism, and create fears on the basis of what I like to call unfinished businesses from the Second World War.
Okay. Okay, that's really helpful to my understanding. So, I know that you've taken a lot of the lessons that you've learned, and you're teaching emerging leaders to reject division. That's some of the work that you've been doing through renewing our minds. Teach emerging leaders to reject division, and then you mentioned, when you wrote to me when I asked you some of these questions in advance, you talked about. Rejecting division and the kind of leaders like Donald Trump. Could you get a little more specific? You talked about seeing him go down the golden escalator, but what are the things that you've seen, like specifically? If somebody were to say, "Oh, come on, what do you mean? How can you possibly, say this?" Like, what are some specific categories you would use?
Can I, before that, and you
Mhm.
remind me if I forget a question,
Yeah, no,
because I tend sometimes to elaborate too much, but can you remind me if I do? It is important that I give a little bit of a background to this ministry I used to lead,
yes, yeah.
because it's very much connected with each other. One leads to another. So after the war is over, I lived in Australia for several years and came back to Croatia. I was invited to lead then a new ministry, which was interdenominational, non-denominational ministry, which was given the name Rome. Rome for renewing our minds. Thoughts are coming from Paul when he talks at least twice in his letters, calling us to have our minds renewed, obviously renewed in the image of Jesus. So this ministry was established in 1999. So this is like 4 years following the wars between Serbs, Croats, and Bosniaks, but still finishing off in Kosovo, Macedonia, and there. So objective of this ministry was, because this area, former Yugoslavia, this is a small area, comparing with America, definitely. Mm-hmm. And there are so many, the war is over, with new divisions, new levels of not trusting each other. Children, young people are being taught to hate the neighbor just on the basis of ethnicity, as what we are now seeing emerging here at different level, hating immigrants and hating refugees and whatever, Mm-hmm. So we had this thing between Serbs, Croats, Bosniaks, Albanians, and so on. War is finishing technically, but relationships are broken severely. And the parents and churches are teaching children not to trust the other one if he is a Serb or a Croat or whatever. Mm. So we are building the future in such a small territory where some of those young people will never visit, for example, just a few kilometers away across the border, their family in Serbia, for example, whatever, because of this hatred that now has to become generational, unfortunately. So this is the climate in which this ministry is being born. So we want to create a ministry that would invite young potential leaders across ethnic, religious, and all real lines that exist of division in the former space of former Yugoslavia. We want to invite not only Christians, not only Protestants and evangelicals who are tiny minority, but also Catholics and Orthodox. We want to invite Muslims, which are very present in the region. We want to invite Jews and agnostic and atheists. Mm-hmm. So we're creating a ministry that somehow needs to speak all of them and putting emphasis on rebuilding friendship, on teaching what real leadership is, the leadership of service. You are not a leader to be served at the political level, whichever level it is. You're not a leader to be served, but to serve. Mm-hmm. Teaching them to know how to reconcile and forgive, and all of this on the platform, on the person of Jesus.
Okay.
Now, have this in mind. This ministry is not the church.
Okay.
So we are stopping at a certain level. This is not a church, but it is a movement that is based on the platform of Jesus to help those young people to forgive, to reconcile, to heal, and to become leaders who serve, because many of those young people will soon be in political leaderships in different countries.
Okay.
So should the war come or new tensions, that maybe you will have some breaks, you will not rush into just letting your blood run you, but that you will think differently about approaching the questions of conflict.
Okay.
But this was the basis of ministry. And I can tell you this was not a huge ministry in the sense that we have been working with millions and millions, but we had our couple of thousand that have been trained directly through this ministry of Rome. And there are other ministries that kind of were inspired by what we are doing, and they started their own work. Mm-hmm. And this is what attracted also participants to come from some other countries, from Middle East, for example,
okay,
from African countries, because they recognize that we have some overlapping story, so we can learn from each other. Right. So here we are. This is the heart of the matter. And I'm maybe a little bit talking too much, but it is.
No, this is really helpful for me to understand.
To jump into your very question. Here we are. having Jesus in the center of our ministry, and yet working with Muslims and with the Jews. We don't want to convert them. We want to be honest towards them so that they can trust us, but we want to offer them Jesus. And we want to offer them Jesus as he radiates from, especially from the New Testament and from the Gospel.
Okay.
We want to help them, and I want to be careful here because many do not understand this. We want to help them to understand, even when we do not say that way, then somehow this Jesus throws completely a new light on our relationships.
Mm.
And if you literally take Old Testament, and if you take Islam, whatever, you are not getting that without Jesus, without putting Jesus in the center to be the filter through which everything needs to be filtered. And why is this important? We see it now, here. People quoting, I don't know, Old Testament now very much, they like to call it, to justify Christian nationalism.
Right.
They're taking things as Christians out of context. Instead of going to Jesus and say, how do I read the pages of the Old Testament through Jesus? They take it completely out of that context. And just because there is a verse that says, I don't know what, I need to be reminded, that
Right.
would justify their action, they say, this is what the Bible teaches.
Right.
So we wanted to help the young people that Jesus brings completely new light, and that he is the model of genuine humanity.
Mm-hmm.
So here I want to also put a disclaimer, because some of my evangelical friends, brothers will say, oh, you are teaching, I don't know, social gospel, this or that. No. I fully believe, and my team believe, and those who are leading, that Jesus is the finished work. He completely reveals God, the Father. I think we were firmly grounded in the historic Christianity.
Okay.
But what we want to emphasize is this, that the same Jesus who saves becomes also the only legitimate model of true humanity. And if
Okay.
this is so, also for leadership.
Okay.
So does this kind of resonate with you?
Yes, it absolutely resonates with me. And I think about, some of the things that Jesus showed us, the way of Jesus. In my more recent book, I laid out three things where I was saying the way of Jesus versus the way of Trump. And this will probably lead us into what you saw, but I had three things that I simplified it to: the way of peace versus the way of the demagogue. Because I see that demagogic leadership is all about stirring up division, stirring up hate, populism, getting that going, where Jesus, tries to bring shalom. We're to bring shalom, the way of Jesus. And then the second one is the way of truth versus the way of the deceiver. Jesus was truth. And then the third one is the way of justice versus the way of the oppressor. And what I've told people a lot is that my biggest area of learning in the last few years that I'm really trying to work on is around the idea of biblical justice. I feel like that's something that was underemphasized in my ministry for 20 years. I didn't talk about it. I think I fell for some of the tropes around law and order rather than justice. And I'm still learning about that. But anyway, so I'm just resonating with what you're saying. And another thing that I'll say that I've said a lot, that where I'm resonating with what you're saying about Jesus, is that this whole Christian nationalist movement, and I'd say a lot of what Donald Trump is playing to, is human beings' innate sense of tribalism. And Jesus came to destroy tribalism. And so I just want to hear what you have to say about any of that, and then just relate it to Donald Trump, like the categories that you saw that were alarming to you.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm going now towards your first question, but sort of a little bit around, because I have to
Yeah,
touch these things.
that's fine.
But
Yeah.
what you are saying is this, in one way or another. what Christian nationalism wants to establish now, and America has developed its specific form of Christian nationalism. It doesn't exist only here. There is a form of Russian Christian nationalism. There is a form of Balkan Christian nationalism. Wherever you have a domineering Christian group, some of those countries, you have some form of Christian nationalism. And it didn't start yesterday. It goes back to history.
Right.
But the heart of the problem of this, and then I will go connected with this because I want to explain how does this Rome connects with this challenge with Trump. The very thing, the Christian nationalism does the very thing that the Jews of Jesus' time wanted to do with Jesus. They wanted to militarize their religion and Jesus. They didn't have even an argument. They would be happy with Messiah as long as he would play according to their book, their Agenda 25 or whatever it is. As long as Jesus would empower them, as long as he would serve their nationalistic ideas of finally getting rid of those Romans and in at least merciful ways possible. Humanly speaking, we know that there is a deeper spiritual saving dimension, him leading to the cross. But looking from this other perspective, this also led him to the cross because he did not want to play according to their agendas. He did not want to become, I have to be very careful, but at the time, he did not want to become a Jewish nationalist who takes the Old Testament and all the prophecies and promises given to Abraham and so on to militarize this. And finally, here we have a leader who is going to, and imagine that leader, not only that he can do miracle. He can, in one moment, he can, if he just says a word, he would kill thousands of Romans in front of him.
Right.
They wanted this. This is what Christian nationalists want.
Okay.
This is what
everywhere in the world, not just in America, but this is the pattern.
Yeah, yes. This is the pattern. And this is one of the major cognitive dissonances, contradictions, where we split the ways. We may be called Christians on this side or this side, but this Christianity and this Christianity are not the same thing anymore. I hope I'm not radical.
That's exactly where I was hoping you would get to, because I just see it playing out, and I feel like we don't have the vocabulary yet to talk about some of what we're dealing with, but people who've witnessed it in other countries can see where it leads, and can see like we need to pay attention to these issues because we've seen where it can go. And I think Christian nationalism is a heretical view of Christianity. It does damage. It does serious damage, but it plays to things that are deep in the human heart, that tribalism that's deep in the human heart that we need to bring to the light. So, yeah.
Christian nationalism, in its ultimate expression, is not different than Islamic jihadism.
Right.
Because believe me, if power is given to some of those people, they would act same.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So, why don't you? Yeah. So now let's go to Trump with that background. Just a little bit of what, because then I want to get to Gaza too. But why don't you tell us just what you saw in the MAGA movement that was alarming? What you've seen, just some categories that you could tell people. Here's why you should be concerned.
So let me put a bridge between Rome and this, because I have not said it yet. Here in our history of teaching people, we are looking for the examples of leaders who, though not perfect, they somehow resonated with Jesus. They somehow reflected that kind of leadership we want to teach them. And this is leadership of service, leadership of sacrifice, leadership of empathy, leadership of kindness. So we are trying to do this. And we have brought them a number of people who, someone say, oh, but he, Bonhoeffer, for example, but he this or that. Nevertheless, he was maybe a radical example, but nevertheless still can teach us how to follow Jesus radically. Then we were talking about about Wilberforce, for example. The man who gives his complete, he's torn between, does he want to become a pastor or does he want to be in politics? And then he's being encouraged by his friends. Maybe you can do both somehow. And he is, for his entire political life, he dedicates himself to actually dealing with the slave trade. For example.
And in case, I just want to say, so that people understand, you said William Wilberforce is who you're talking about, and Dietrich Bonhoeffer was the other example. I just want to catch people up to who you're talking about. But yeah, keep talking about William Wilberforce.
So William Wilberforce understood that it goes into the face of the gospel to promote slavery. You can't have both. He understood it. So we were teaching about other people who were not necessarily Christians, but in their way, they understood Jesus better than many Christians. Mahatma Gandhi, for example, who even apparently said, if it were not for you Christians, I have no issue with Jesus. I'm paraphrasing now. So we are choosing, we are talking about Mother Teresa. Okay, some of people would criticize even her, but let's remember she was human too, and only a few of us would dare to minister in her circumstances. But she gives her whole life to those kids there because she understood Jesus, that he would do like this. So, and we had other models. We were even trying to find some local that come closer to it. So we are trying to bring those people into our story to say they have all learned from Jesus in one way or another. And that's kind of leaders we want to be. You can be a Muslim, but you can also emulate Jesus. You can learn his kindness, his love, his empathy, his grace, his mercy, his selective, choices when he's going to be angry, for example. We have all, whether you're Christian or not, we have plenty to learn from Jesus because he is the only genuine model of true humanity and of leadership. And now comes Donald Trump. Listen, what happened in America is not just an American thing. People will tell me, why are you so wired up about America? Because when things happen here, everyone suffers, sorry to say, or everyone is blessed, depending on what is happening. When things happen in the Balkans, the circle of suffering is much smaller. But when it's happened here, as we can see now, we are not living in a confusion just here. We are living globally in confusion. And here comes this leader, new type of leader, who has no restraints in how he communicates with people. He's putting down anyone he doesn't like. He's using this as his leadership model, so he makes people feel small. He's a man, one can say no one is perfect, and I'm glad that only God knows me, say when I was younger, whatever it is. But we need to learn from our mistakes. And here we have a man who probably has never learned from his mistakes and sins. Whose way of deliberately being, is a lifestyle. Just look at what is happening right now with all of this thing about, what's his name? Epstein.
Yeah, right.
My goodness, Lord, have mercy on us if it's only 20% true what we are hearing.
Right.
This man is leading this nation and he wants to lead the world. This is what the problem is. Suddenly, you have in the world, you have so many little Trumps who are eagerly waiting to get a green light so they could act likewise in their little countries. And many Americans don't see that. Suddenly, he becomes a model. He becomes a model of leadership. And I know it because even some young people who are educated through our movement, and it was not just a program, it was a movement, have fallen for this. And I'm thinking, my goodness, what have we taught you? What did you learn over all of those years?
Right.
So you have in the country, you have around the world people who are embracing Trump because they would like to lead their countries in the same way. And I know I'm saying something that maybe not everyone is saying. So I saw this from the very first moment when he started nominating himself for the president and he became the president. I saw it.
Mhm.
And what we are seeing today is nothing new. It's just multiplying what he was during his first presidency,
Right.
all the obnoxiousness, all the, I mean, this man lies. That's his natural language.
Mhm.
He lies. He doesn't, he lies. He
Mhm.
lies. And then you have here, and this is another aspect, you have here such a huge segment of Christians, which we call MAGA Christians, or many white evangelicals, Christian nationalists, who are
Sure.
applauding to this, coming
Right.
with the banners, Jesus saves, but Trump, I don't know what. Jesus saves me spiritually, but Trump saves me here, or whatever
Right.
it is. They are blending together Trump and Jesus. They are turning him into some kind of messiah, sinful messiah, just like with the cult of David Koresh.
Right.
I'm familiar with that.
Yes. Yes.
90, was it 90? Branch Davidians. And this meant so many people went to death because they naively followed him. And in his mind, they were like two messiahs. Jesus, but Jesus didn't finish. He was not good enough, didn't finish everything. So he comes as a sinful messiah, and he can sleep with the wives of his followers. He can sleep with the children, he can do all of this. To me, what happened with this David Koresh, Branch Davidians, is a small picture of what we are now experiencing
Mhm.
in this country at a large scale, and we are becoming gradually powerless because all the instruments that are supposed to keep this country safe are bowing down one after the other to him.
That's exactly right. And you talked about how he had a model of leadership that he was putting forward, and where you could, when he started out, it was such an abusive way of speaking, no restraints, like you said, and I think a lot of Christians there were a lot of people who just liked it. First of all, a lot of people who call themselves Christians who liked it, but what I heard from a lot of my friends and family was, yeah, I don't like those things about him, but I like his policies. But my consistent message has been, he is his policy. I mean, his policy is just, it all emanates from his character. And then this model that he has completely changed now the Republican Party, because he's attracted to people who follow that model. And so this party has, and I would say that the white evangelical church is changing in many of those same ways because they're following that model. And I think it's naive for people to say, well, I don't like these character things, but I like his policies. It poisons the conscience of the people who follow him, and it corrupts the movements.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And
yeah,
yeah,
go ahead. Yeah.
and I was still leading this ministry Rome when he became president the first time. I'm not anymore. I've surrendered it at the end of 2019 to a younger person, but I was still leading. And I was saying to myself, my Lord, we cannot be quiet about this.
Right.
That's not the kind of leader we were teaching you to become.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean Jesus, who is a leader who is kind of building his lifestyle leadership on the principles of Jesus. That's not what we are teaching you. That this man goes completely against anything we taught you ever.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the culmination of this kind of bridge.
Right.
Why does this ministry Rome link with what is happening now?
Right.
And I felt that it was my responsibility as the leader of this movement to tell them clearly, we don't want that.
Mm-hmm.
This is not what we taught you. This is not what we want you to become. And especially if you are today in the fields of political leadership in your countries, I don't know, in Albania or Serbia,
Mm-hmm.
or Romania,
Mm-hmm.
or I don't know, because, from 60 countries people are coming.
Right.
Programs. So this is answer to this part of the
Yeah.
question, a little bit kind of elaborated.
Yeah. So, for the last few minutes that we've got here, I do want to turn a corner and apply some of what we're talking about now. You mentioned how we can't be silent about Trump, and I just have to confess that up until now, I've been silent about what I'm seeing in Gaza. And like I said at the beginning of this talk, it's because I feel inadequate to the task. There's a couple of issues that I tell people I don't want to say anything about this until I know enough to say everything, because I don't want to do damage. But I'm realizing I'm never going to be able to know enough to say everything about Israel Palestine. I just need to start talking about. I'm horrified by what I see, and I want to know how to talk about it. And I've heard you say a few things that I think are helpful. I'm wondering if you could help somebody like me to begin to talk about what I'm seeing from a Christian perspective, when a lot of us have I think real legitimate fears about saying things that will end up either sounding anti-Semitic or being anti-Semitic unintentionally, because that is not at all where I'm coming from. But I'm horrified by, and I also was horrified by what happened on October 7th, obviously. So it's like, what's some wisdom that you can give us for how to even start to talk about these things as Christians?
Oh my goodness, many things could be said. Number one, criticizing Israel is not anti-Semitism. They try to conflate those kind of things, I think, deliberately, so that we all are quiet, don't say anything. Up to this last war that is, over the last 2 years, I thought I had a very clear understanding of what anti-Semitism is. And this is basically, in a simple way, hating Jews for no reason,
Right.
and doing things according to this.
Right.
But this is not hating Jews. This is being critical of what the Israeli government is doing. And to me, these are two different things. And what proves that this is so is also that you have many Jews in America and internationally, Jews who have a significant place in society, who are vocal, and who distance themselves, not only distance, just as firmly as we are talking about this issue here, Trumpism, they speak about what is happening right now, and they're condemning the Israeli government and the, so choose the word genocide. They're fiercely doing that. And making ever so plain that criticizing Israel and saying it is enough what you are doing, so at least war crime, is not anti-Semitism.
Okay.
And we have to be clear with this, because this is being pushed on us so that we are afraid to say anything. Second thing, and there are many things that we can say. Second thing is, yes, and let me put a disclaimer here. I don't have high opinion of what Hamas did 2 years ago. This, and even the International Court of Justice is calling some of their leaders to account because this was a war crime. So no one is defending Hamas in any way and form. No one. I mean, I'm certainly not, God forbid. This was a war crime. This should have never happened. But my goodness, how much Israel has repaid Palestinians for that? How many times do you have to multiply to see what has been happening since then on a daily basis? I mean, there are documents. If there was any struggle, war, however you want to call it, ever been documented in real time, it's this one. And however some are trying to push it in the background, they cannot. You will find that they are being pushed forward. The level of atrocities, obliteration of Palestinian people, moving them through Gaza left and right, or moving them, treating their lives as if they are disposable commodity, using hunger as a means of killing off one whole group. These are not fantasies. This is what is happening. And here comes, for us who are Christians, I would say the most tragic thing. So many evangelical Christians are deliberately turning the blind eye to this because it doesn't fit their theology.
Right. Amen. Yeah.
And here I'm bringing dispensationalism. This is another thing we can talk about. And this is, in a simplified way, caricaturing prophecies of the Bible, eschatological prophecies, politicizing them, weaponizing them, because today in American government, many people believe that. And this guides in American international politics.
Right.
because they believe that Israel can do whatever it can. Whatever it can. On the Jewish side, suddenly forgive me, I need to be more precise. Israeli side, suddenly Old Testament matters so much. They have remembered Amalekites, 3,000 years they didn't. Remember Amalekites, and they think it's now their duty to do what the first king of Israel did not do, and they need to kill off everyone there.
Right.
And they're speaking plainly about this. It's not that this is hidden. They're making statements which are, my goodness, if anyone would be making those statements 2-3 years ago, our hair would be growing like this up if we have.
Right. Those of us who have hair, yeah.
This is a joke. So this is what is happening. And then you have evangelical Christians who do not want to see this. They do not want to see this because they are told that they have to bless Israel because of their disfigured understanding of eschatology. And this eschatology has become dangerous.
Right.
Almost a self-fulfilled prophecy.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where the problem is. And I could talk a lot about this because through the ministry I led for 20 years, I also learned to know a little bit more about this situation than I knew before. Believe me, I would have spoken differently, not maybe that long time ago, certainly 10 years, 20 years ago, completely different. But when to our program, we started receiving Palestinians, and Palestinians, to be fair, Christians, and when they brought their story, you begin to learn more and more about their story. I see things differently because I know a number of people. Right. I know Palestinian Christians, how they're flourishing there. Most of them are in a West Bank or Israel proper, and some in Gaza. They're educated, well educated. However small churches they have, they're active in society. And those people, most of them are promoting peaceful resolutions to their situation. Yeah. But they are suffering together with also other Palestinians right now.
Right.
My good friend, a lady, she was a part of my program in the past, Rome. She was even in our team several times. She lives in Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. Her heart is broken when she says, only 1 hour away from me, children are screaming, being killed. They don't have a food. I can afford a food to my kid. My heart is aching because I am not allowed to do anything to help those people. So when you have first-hand experiences with those people, it changes your perspective. When you hear them, how they're being treated when they come to America to speak about the situation with disbelief, why don't you leave, if you're a Palestinian Christian, why don't you leave Palestine and create a room for Israel so that prophecies can be fulfilled and so on, all kinds of nonsense. Then you change your perspective. So I'm not blind about the fact what happened 2 years ago.
Right.
But what breaks my heart is the evil by which Israel carries out its policies, which are clearly policies of ethnic cleansing. And I know what that means like and looks like, because even in the war that we had in the Balkans, in some regions we had that.
Right. Yeah, you've experienced it. You've seen it before. And yeah, thank you for that. That really, those 3 points, I'm just going to repeat those 3 points that you made, because I think all 3 of them are areas that I need to learn how to talk about, so that, and that first one is that just simply criticizing Israel is not anti-Semitism. And that, I'm going to have a lot to say about that in future months, as I learn more how to do this. But secondly, that while Hamas obviously committed a war crime, horrific acts, what's happening now, you're saying, is just very disproportionately cruel and destructive, what's being done to Palestinians in Gaza. And then third, and this is the key one that probably I'm going to have the most to say about, that third point is your point that evangelical Christians are not playing a helpful role in this. They're throwing fuel on the fire, I would say. And this is where having bad theology becomes not just a personal thing. Oh, that person has some sort of eccentric theology, but the theology that they have of the end times, I think, is actually doing serious damage in the world where everyone lives, and it has to be confronted. Because is that a fair way for me to put that?
Excellent. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Yeah. So that helps me. Those three things just give me some guidance on how I can start to talk about this. And so I really appreciate this. We could talk for 4 hours. And so I think we'll have to do this again, because, and maybe next time we do it, we can pick a topic like for instance, the evangelical, the way that a lot of evangelicals are feeding what's happening, to Palestinians in Israel. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. It has been really a pleasure to be with you now, and thank you for inviting me. And if you do again, I will gladly say yes.
Yeah, we definitely will. We'll do this again.